James CARSTAIRS. Hello everybody, it's Katie here. Literally for weeks I've been hinting that I wanted someone to go to Jem for help. Finally, it happened in this episode. Magnus didn't exactly listen to his advice properly, but you know, at least he went to him. That's something. So episode 19. For some reason I'd convinced myself that we only had 20 episodes overall in this season, but it turns out we've got 21. So I think we have one more episode to go on its own, and then they're putting episode 21 with the finale. So this episode was mostly about forging a sword that could do what Glorious did. But before we get into all of that, I am going to talk about poor Magnus. This man, as if he hasn't been through enough. So basically his job in this episode was to wander the streets of New York and reminisce on happier times with Alec. I mean, thanks for that pain. At the start of the episode, we have his father finding him and giving his magic back to him. Ugh, it's the level of manipulation that this man is going to do. It makes me uncomfortable and I want to get Magnus out of there. So Magnus officially has his magic back and then continues to go on a walk down memory lane. We had this scene with the love lock. We knew this episode was going to be painful given the title anyway. That good old I love you in Indonesian haunts me. I see those words and I panic. Yeah, that phrase ruined me in City of Lost Souls. So I wasn't exactly happy to have an episode with that as the title. So Magnus goes back to this lock and we get a little flashback of him and Alec putting it there, and that's all sweet and cute. But then present day Magnus takes the lock off and burns it. And then that's just the beginning, because throughout the episode we have so many of these flashback scenes. We have a scene between them and Madsy and they start talking about being parents, and Alex saying that Magnus would be a great dad. And you know, this is something that Magnus has never thought about before, but it's suddenly a possibility because he's got Alec. I hated this episode. And these memories get more intense and it keeps going back throughout his entire history with Alec. And we're seeing flashbacks from episodes we've already seen. We had the Malik kiss, we had them first meeting, them falling in love. Just rip my heart out, why don't you? I don't need it anyway. So when it all becomes too much for Magnus, he goes to Jem for help. Or brother Zachariah, you know, whatever you want to call him. I think my favourite thing about this scene is that Jem actually spoke, rather than using the silent brother way of communicating via the mind. Because he's not a typical silent brother and he doesn't have his mouth stitched, he still can speak to Magnus. I love the line that he said, that some words are too important. He's just such a good boy. I absolutely loved the little hint as to Magnus's past and their history together when Jem was talking about the loves that Magnus has had before. They have both suffered a lot of pain. You know, anyone that's read the books knows exactly what they've been through. Just think of all the stuff that we could have brought into this show if we'd have gotten another season. If we'd have been given a final season rather than a final 2-hour special, then we could have unpacked Jem's history. We could have delved into his past. We could have gotten Tessa. We could have just had all of these amazing things that we're not really going to have a chance to explore. You know, one more season would have done it. Like, if you're going to end the show, just give us a final season. Then that could have covered Heavenly Fire and we would have been done. We'd have been satisfied with that. But no, we've got to force everything in one 2-hour special. I am never watching Freeform again. My worst nightmare is Freeform picking up another YA book series that I love and me having to come back with my tail in between my legs. Like, you know how I said I wasn't going to watch Freeform again? But anyway, this conversation between Jem and Magnus was one of my favourites. Just because it's Magnus and Jem. And Jem is always that wise person that says the right thing. He tells Magnus that he won't get rid of his memories of Alec for him, and that if Magnus really wants that, then he can do it himself. So Magnus storms off, determined to get rid of his memories anyway, really hoping that's not the last we see of Jem. I want more Jem content. Immediately, thank you. Magnus starts trying to remove his memories himself. He pulls them out of his head, and I really love how this scene was done because the memories were just playing all around him, and it was such an emotional scene, and I just like the way that it was shot. But then Asmodeus turns up. I mean, I knew this was going to happen. I knew that he was going to use this situation to his advantage. This is why he wanted Alec to break up with Magnus in the first place. Magnus is completely alone at the moment, well that's how he feels anyway. He doesn't have anyone else to turn to. He thinks his father is there to help him now because he's the one to say that you need these memories, you need to fight through them. So at the moment, to Magnus, it looks like his father is the only one in the world who actually wants to help him. And then he hugs him, and I hate that Magnus has been put in this situation. So yeah, sad times on the Malik front. Not that I expected any less given last episode, but you know, yay. So then there was everything else that happened in this episode. Because it's going to take time to make glorious, Jace decides to go after Clary and Jonathan, pretend to be on their side. So basically we had some of the plot of Lost Souls. We had the three of them in the apartment together. We had that scene in the club with the fairy drugs. You know, these are all scenes that we got to read in Lost Souls, but they are reversed. So it's Clary under Jonathan's spell instead of Jace. So far I have liked this storyline being switched around, but this was the first episode in which I kind of wished it was Clary on the other side, just because I absolutely hate seeing her in this position and being trapped under Jonathan's spell, and instead it's Jace having to come to the rescue. So I'm still happy that the show switched it around because I think it was really interesting to see the other side of it, but I hate that Jace is having to track her down and he's seeing that his Clary isn't there anymore. Yeah, so it was a bit heartbreaking. Of course we had some more awkward and uncomfortable sibling bonding between Clary and Jonathan. Although I hate it. Every time Jonathan looks at Clary in that way that he does, like she is his everything, it makes me sick. It does. So Jace and Alec use the Sealy rings to keep in touch whilst Jace is in Prague. Clary and Jonathan's plan to get the Morningstar sword is to kidnap the Sealy Queen when they end up in this club and they take the hallucinogenics. Clary and Jace start dancing and Jace obviously loses his focus and the ring becomes visible. Jonathan obviously sees it, sets Jace up to get attacked by Sealy's. When Clary started fighting to help him, at first I thought that maybe this was her siding with Jace as opposed to Jonathan, but then she threatens to end Jace if he ever betrays her again and pulls him back to the Institute. So, you know, that went well. I absolutely hated the look of pure devastation on Jace's face when he stood up inside the Institute at the end. That poor boy. On the bright side, the sword exists now. Throughout this episode, Izzy has been working with the serum to extract particles of Glorious to make a new sword. They tried to get help from Luke's sister, but she's not up to it, so instead she gives Izzy the tools that she needs to make the sword. I say this all the time, but I absolutely love how much Izzy is into science and can do seemingly anything. She just forges this sword herself. When she puts on those goggles and gets to work on that sword, I love her. I would lay down my life for her. Another ingredient that they need for the sword is some angel blood. But Jace has already left for Prague, so they can't exactly whip him back to the Institute. Instead, they use Simon, because obviously it's Jace's blood that runs through his veins. So yeah, he has to have some blood extracted. And you know, considering he's a vampire and he's seen some pretty dark stuff, the needle terrifies him. This scene between him and Izzy when she needs to extract the blood, it was so cute. The conversation they have about Superman, where Simon's talking about how Lois fell in love with him for who he was, and you can see the look on Izzy's face change because she realises she understands that because it's exactly what she's going through with Simon. And I think that's the moment where she really realises that she has feelings for him and that it's more than what she thought it was. I love them so much. I cannot wait for more Sizzy, honestly. They do manage to make the sword and it does its little heavenly fire flame things and it looks all impressive. So I can't wait until it pierces Jonathan's heart. So the other main thing that was going on in this episode was the storyline between Maya and Jordan. They're back at the Jade Wolf trying to refurbish it, get rid of the signs of a massacre, and Raphael ends up walking in. He's come to apologise because he was the one that experimented on Heidi and started this whole mess in the first place. But of course he walks in during the daylight and is standing there in the sun that's coming through the window. And Maya is like, "What are you doing?" So of course he ends up telling them everything about the downworlder to mundane experiments. They go to the Institute to confront Simon about it. Him and Izzy are saying that there's only one vial left and it's not up to them to decide who is more worthy of it. No one can decide that really. I have to say I wasn't exactly happy with how Maya acted in this scene because she was angry that the serum had been destroyed, and though I can understand why that would be devastating, she did take it out on Simon a little bit. Maya was rightfully pissed off that Victor was going to do that without their consent at first, but then she switches and kind of wants to get her hands on it. And I'm kind of sad that she didn't properly hear Simon out when he was talking about how they had no choice. But then the scene back in the Jade Wolf at the end kind of made up for that because Maya did come to accept that there's not one person that deserves this more than anyone. So I kind of like her learning curve throughout this episode and how her thought process changes. So you think it's all good and she's accepted it, but then we see that Jordan has stolen that last vial. I don't know what Jordan's plan is with that. I know they did kiss early on in the episode, so there are feelings there, and I have a horrible feeling that he did steal that serum for her. Part of me is wondering whether he plans to give that to her without telling her, because I just feel like that's something he would do. He turned her into a wolf without her consent, so would he really be above reversing that without her permission as well? We know that Jordan has to pay a price for the things that he's done in his past. And I just feel like if he tries to slip Maya the serum without telling her, it will show that although he's learned that what he did was wrong, he still hasn't really changed all that much because he's still willing to do something like that without consent. I don't know. He might not do that. He might just be straight up honest with Maya and tell her that he has the serum. Who knows where it's going? Other things that I've forgotten to mention. There was a conversation between Jace and Alec in this episode that I really loved. And Jace knows that Alec isn't being completely honest with him. And I love that despite Alec not telling him, Jace still knows that there's something more going on. I really wanted Alec to be honest with Jace, but to be fair, there was a lot going on in this episode and it wasn't exactly the right time to start telling him all about Asmodeus. But I am glad that we got to see a conversation between the two of them. I mean, we get to see Magnus's pain in this episode through his memories. We know what he's going through. We've seen him break down. We haven't had a chance to see how much this has hurt Alec at the moment because he has been busy trying to save Clary. And I feel like there's going to come a point where he can't hold it in any longer and we're going to see his emotional breakdown over this. I'm dreading next episode. The only thing that I was really disappointed in this episode was the fact that Luke dropped back in again, temporarily. And we still don't really know what's going on with him. He keeps just popping in to help, but we don't know what his life's like at the Praetor. We don't know what he's been up to. And really, I think that this isn't the fault of the show, because I predict that it was going to lead to a bigger story in another season, but they didn't get another season. I'm just sad because it feels like Luke is a minor character at the moment, and I miss him. So if there's anything that I've forgotten to talk about, then please feel free to mention it down in the comments. Tell me your thoughts and feelings on this episode. Are you emotionally ruined because of Malik? I am. I will see you again next week. Thank you guys so much for watching. Bye!